In 18th century France, there was a man whose hunger was so insatiable that he ate stones, live cats, and carrion. His story is a spiral of disgust and fascination, but it only becomes a legend of terror when a 14-month-old toddler vanishes without a trace, and suspicion falls on him. This is the true and bizarre story of Tarrare, the man who could never be full. Imagine a hunger that never ends, not the midnight munchies or the cravings after a long day. Imagine a hunger that forces you to dig through garbage, eat carrion, and devour even the most unimaginable things, just to numb the agonizing void in your stomach for a brief moment. For a man named Tarrare, this was his horrifying reality. Born around 1772 near Lyon, he was a medical mystery from the start. Although he weighed barely 100 pounds, 45 kilograms, as a teenager, his appetite was limitless. It's said that in a single day, he could consume an entire quarter of a bullock, a quantity of meat that weighed as much as he did. Despite these incredible amounts, he always remained thin. His body was a collection of contradictions. Reports claim his cheeks had such flaccid, wrinkled skin that he could hold a dozen apples in them. His mouth itself was unusually wide, his lips barely visible. When his stomach was empty, the skin hung so loosely that he could wrap it around his waist. But when he had eaten, his belly would swell up like a huge balloon. A constant sweat and a foul odor emanated from him, so bad that people could hardly stand to be near him. Even as a child, his appetite was so extreme that his parents could no longer feed him. As a teenager, he left home and was on his own from then on. For Tarrare, an odyssey through France began, driven by a single relentless demon: his hunger. Alone on the streets, Tarrare joined a traveling group of thieves and prostitutes, begging and stealing to survive. But he soon realized that his monstrous ability could also be a source of income. He became a fairground attraction, a performer whose act pushed the boundaries of the imaginable. In Paris, he became a star of the street, known as the man who could eat anything. Before the eyes of a disgusted yet fascinated crowd, he would devour baskets of apples. But that was just the beginning. He ate stones, corks, and other inedible objects thrown to him by the audience. However, his trademark became live animals. Contemporaries described how he would tear open a live cat's belly with his teeth, drink its blood, and devour the entire animal, except for the bones, only to later vomit up the fur and skin. Another time, he swallowed a whole eel without chewing after crushing its head with his teeth. His body seemed to have no limits, but this was not without risk. Once, he collapsed during a performance with a severe intestinal obstruction and had to be taken to the Hôtel Dieu hospital. After his recovery, he offered to eat the attending physician's pocket watch as a thank you. The doctor was not amused and threatened to cut him open to retrieve his property, at which point Tarrare wisely withdrew the offer. His life was a constant struggle, a balancing act between spectacle and self-destruction. He was a monster on stage, but behind the curtain, he was a prisoner of his own body, and the turmoil of the French Revolution was about to give his life an even more absurd twist. When the War of the First Coalition broke out, Tarrare joined the French Revolutionary Army. But what was a patriotic duty for others became a logistical nightmare for him and his superiors. The standard army rations were no more than a drop in the ocean for him. Even when his rations were quadrupled, it was far from enough. Driven by his hunger, he did chores for other soldiers in exchange for their food. He rummaged through garbage heaps and fought with stray dogs over scraps from slaughterhouses. His condition deteriorated rapidly until he was admitted to a military hospital for extreme exhaustion. There, he became a research subject for the doctors Dr. Corville and the famous military surgeon Baron Pierre-François Percy. They were fascinated and horrified at the same time. To test his capacity, They served him a meal intended for 15 laborers. Tarrare ate it all in a single sitting and then fell into a deep sleep. But his hunger knew no morals. The doctors observed him eating from trash cans, stealing other patients' leftovers, and even meddling with the medical dressings in the infirmary. Other doctors considered him mentally ill and pushed for him to be committed to an asylum. But Dr. Percy was convinced Tarrare was physically ill and wanted to continue his experiments. This fascination led to one of the most bizarre ideas in the history of military espionage. News of the man with the bottomless stomach reached the army leadership and General Alexandre de Beauharnais. Could Tarrare's unique ability be used for military purposes? The idea was to use him as a secret courier. He was to swallow important documents in a small box, cross enemy lines unnoticed, and deliver the message after, well, the natural digestive process. To test this, an experiment was conducted. Dr. Corville placed a document in a small wooden box, which Tarrare then swallowed. 2 days later, the box was recovered from his excrement, the document still legible. The test was a success. As a reward, Tarrare was served a wheelbarrow full of raw bull's lungs and liver, which he devoured on the spot. The plan seemed to work, so Tarrare was sent on his first and only mission, to deliver a message to a captured French colonel behind Prussian lines. But the plan had a fatal flaw. Tarrare himself. He couldn't speak a word of German, and his strange behavior made him anything but inconspicuous. He was captured almost immediately. The Prussians whipped him, but he revealed nothing. Finally, they staged a mock execution to break him completely. Terrified, Tarrare confessed everything. The Prussians chained him to a latrine and waited. When the wooden box finally appeared, they found only a test message inside. Humiliated and beaten, he was sent back to the French front. Traumatized by his failed espionage career, Tarrare returned to the hospital and begged Dr. Percy to cure him of his terrible appetite. He was willing to try anything. Percy experimented with laudanum, wine vinegar, and tobacco pills, but nothing could suppress the hunger. A diet of soft-boiled eggs also failed miserably. Desperation drove Tarrare to ever darker deeds. He would sneak out of the hospital at night to fight with stray dogs over garbage. Worse, he was caught drinking the blood of patients undergoing bloodletting, and was even found in the hospital morgue, feeding on the dead. The staff was horrified, but Dr. Percy initially refused to give up on his patient. Then, the unthinkable happened. A 14-month-old child, who was being cared for on the ward, disappeared without a trace. A terrible suspicion immediately spread. All eyes turned to Tarrare. Although there was no proof, the suspicion was so strong and the outrage so great that Dr. Percy could no longer protect him. Chased from the hospital by an angry mob, Tarrare vanished for the next 4 years. The crime was never solved, and the unproven suspicion that Tarrare had eaten the child hung over his story like a dark shadow. 4 years later, in 1798, Tarrare reappeared. A doctor from Versailles contacted Dr. Percy, informing him that a former patient of his was dying. It was Tarrare. He was suffering from advanced tuberculosis. In his final moments, he believed his suffering came from a golden fork he had stolen and swallowed years before, which was now stuck in his intestines. He died shortly thereafter, at the age of only 26. His body decomposed so quickly and emitted such an unbearable stench that most surgeons refused to perform an autopsy. But the chief physician, Tessier, and Dr. Percy wanted to uncover the secret of this body. The autopsy revealed a horrifying sight. The golden fork was never found. Instead, his internal organs were consumed by disease and decay. His esophagus was so wide that one could look directly from his mouth into his stomach. The stomach itself was immense, covered in ulcers, and took up almost the entire abdominal cavity. The life of Tarrare is one of the most bizarre and disturbing stories in medical history. To this day, his condition remains a mystery. Was it an extreme form of hyperthyroidism? Or did he suffer from a rare metabolic disorder that disabled his sense of hunger and satiety? Or was he simply a product of a cruel time and an even crueler defect of nature? The science of the 18th century had no answers, and the truth disappeared with him into the grave. We are left with the gruesome reports and the haunting question, what was Tarrare really, man or beast? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. We are eager to hear your theories, and if you are fascinated by stories like this that push the limits of human imagination, then subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss another video. Until next time.